Great. So again, my name is Patricia Codner. I am new to Halton Catholic. I joined this board in April, and it's been a journey since. I'm enjoying it, and just was delighted to be part of this day, though it was anxiety-provoking. But I'm also learning ways to cope and deal with this kind of stress. I have the pleasure of working with Oliver, and let Oliver introduce himself, and then we will start our presentation.
Hi, my name is Oliver Fuse. I'm a psychological associate, and I'm the Chief of Psychological Services for this board. I have been in this position officially as an employee for about 2.5 years, but I have worked on contract with the board before, so since 2004. So I know the board fairly well. The issue of mental health is a very new topic in terms of intensity that is being addressed in the board from my position. I usually work with our psychology staff, mostly in terms of assessment of learning difficulties and related assessment needs, and I'm also responsible for the speech language pathologists and communicative disorders assistants for the board.
So what I'd like to ask you to do is just to take a moment, take a deep breath, because without breathing we don't function. But just to, if you can, for an hour, park your issues, anything that you have concerns that may be weighing you down. We know parents, we have children we have to take care of. A lot of concerns come with that. But in order for us to learn today in this group, we need to free ourselves of some of those concerns so we can embrace the learning. I'm also recognizing that there's going to be a lot of slides we have up here that is not going to be new to some, and to others it will be. But we're hoping whether it's going to help you increase your capacity in learning, or it's going to affirm what you already know, and also that you're going to leave here with a little bit, one tool, or a little bit more information that's going to help you to deal with your children, your family, your friends, and if you're a teacher, your students. And so we're going to invite you to ask questions if you have them. We tried in the first session, and I'm going to use some of that problem-solving skills that we are gifted with, I hope, is that I quickly glanced through the evaluation. By the way, it said good, so no pressure. But what it did say was that there was a lot of slides we have which we parroted what the slide said. We didn't need to do that because you can read. So we're going to try and correct that one. And secondly, my voice tends to go down to a very soft, couch-like voice. So I'm going to try and keep it up. So if it's going down, just do this. And I'll get it back up. And what was the third thing? The third thing was to be able to have more opportunity to understand what happens within our system, meaning our board, in terms of navigating the processes and getting access of service for our students. We had to rush because we spend a lot of time with the mechanics of all the various disorders, and I think a lot of parents want to know, how do you navigate in the school system? And if that's what you want here, let me see. You want to understand how to address mental health in the school for your students or for your children, then we're going to pay more attention to that in the slides here. Okay. I love this, smiley face. And one of the things that we've learned over the years is when we say mental health, people think mental health disorder. They just tack it on. Mental health, we all have, everybody. And so what does it mean when we say mental health? We need to message that mental health is a positive thing. We need to get it out of the camp of being negative, because then it stops us from moving forward. It creates a stigma, a cloud over it. People don't want to talk about it. People get uncomfortable. They start to go within rather than being out and be able to converse. And so we just have a YouTube clip which will quickly get us all on the same positive note, and then we will start the presentation.
I think I'm a hard worker, and I put a lot of effort into school, and I never take my education for granted.
I like to have really high goals because, you know, you achieve the goal and then you push on even more.
Friends are someone that have your back, and I have great friends.
I honestly, like myself, I really do think I am a good person.
I feel that just having a really good positive attitude is the main thing that helps.
Most of us know the basics of good physical health. A proper diet, exercise, taking care of yourself to avoid getting sick.
But what about good mental health? This too is important for living happy, fulfilling lives. Just as a balanced diet and exercise are hallmarks of good physical health, there are hallmarks for good mental health.
And that is what this program is all about, to get us thinking about what it means to be mentally healthy.
So as we set the stage then about when we say what is mental health, what we're going to take you through is from the large to the small. Start with the world we live in. It's become the buzzword, if you want to use that language, but it's definitely on the radar of most countries, especially the developing countries. And so the World Health Organization gave us a definition of what that is. I'm not going to read it, but it clearly indicates it's the absence of disorder and the ability to manage regular stress in our lives, be productive, fruitful, and live healthy lives. That's what we mean by mental health. When you get into how do we promote that and achieve that, we now know it's not just something that is going to happen either just in the home or just in the school or in other domains. We have to take the silos off and we have to make it a whole community event for mental health to be established. Because if we're not healthy at home and we need help outside of the home and we're not getting it, then it's going to start impacting the community life as well. So it's really just looking at the whole child, the whole person, and looking at the community in which they live in and making sure all domains are functioning appropriately.
And we just picked another example of a country strategy for mental health, and because it shows how universal the approach to mental health is, in that some of the themes that were mentioned here, they call them key aims, are quite similar to what we are doing. So we're working on eliminating stigma, that mental health is something that can be talked about openly, that students and parents and educators feel free to talk about in a way like we talk about other things, sports and homework and literacy. We want to raise awareness within our system and in the community. We want to prevent more serious effects of mental illness. And we want to promote recovery. So you can see embedded in there is kind of like a tiered approach from promotion and prevention to response to more serious problems, but trying to prevent the extent of those problems by promoting well-being and starting before issues arise. And this is another way of talking about a continuum of children that cope well, where we are working on building assets. And you will hear this word a couple of times in our presentation, and you will see it on our website and in the region. How do we build assets internally and externally that children grow up with, so they are a bit more immune, if you want to express it that way, to the effects of stressful events. And then we want to, along the spectrum, recognize early when children show signs of mental health difficulties, as well as responding to more serious situations.
One of the things we want to be mindful of is what we're saying is that we know that there's going to be a percentage of our student population that, regardless of what we do, because they have a propensity to have a mental health disorder, that they're going to have that. But what does it mean when we intervene early? It means that they're going to have better coping skills, they're going to have less incidents that will keep them back from growing and maturing. We have many adults who have a disorder who are functionally just well because they have the assets, as we heard, in their lives, but also they had the interventions in a timely fashion. And so the students who do not have a propensity for a mental health disorder, but are exhibiting behaviors that are a mental health issue, same thing. If we are able to intervene early, then we are able to minimize the trauma and the impact of when they have an episode of some kind, which sometimes can be very, very detrimental, physically or emotionally. And so the whole idea is for us to understand child development, the whole child, the whole person, and then when we start looking at when they're starting to struggle, to catch it early so we can intervene, provide services, give them assets and coping skills so that they can manage throughout their growing years. And this is not just for students, it's for all of us really, because mental health is from you're born until you die.
Are we going to speak about any of those signs to look for?
We will.
Well, okay,
Yes.
I just read.
Yes.
Yeah, and the way that we're starting about it is with this slide, we're going to talk about a couple of observations that you may have that are normal. Because the tricky thing for you as a parent and for us as people working in education is how do we distinguish between the normal variation of behaviors to when is it really a concern. Now, the examples that we're showing are related to things that can happen in adolescence. But I want you to understand that we're really thinking about children from all ages. Although some of those mental health difficulties manifest themselves more in the early teen and late teen years, we realize that anxiety, for example, can be something that we see much earlier, even at a clinical level. What we're going to talk about now is adolescence. And this is an example of a couple of slides that we took and borrowed from Dr. Stan Kuchar, who is one of the leading researchers in terms of teen mental health in Canada. And I will go to his website. We will show you his website in a little while, where you can go and you can get all kinds of very interesting information in slides like this that are modified slightly, and videos and all kinds of useful information about problems in normal teen development. What you see here is data that was actually taken, I think, from this region. And what you can see here is responses from students in terms of how sleepy they feel during different times of the day. And what you will find interesting is when you look at the time slot between 8 and 10, that's the highest time of sleepiness for a teenager. What are they supposed to do at that point in time? Sit here and learn, right? And then when they're less sleepy, 6 to 8, they're hanging out in the mall, right? So what does that tell us in terms of how we should really have our day schedule? So there's a lot of information in terms of research in terms of the sleep needs of adolescents and teenagers. For example, we know that the teenage brain is developing so much in that time period that they need actually more sleep, and they have more sleep. It's just that they have it on the weekend. They catch up on the weekend. So it is perfectly normal for a student to who's a teenager to sleep till 2 o'clock on a Saturday, because that's when they get the amount of sleep that they require. So it helps us understand a little bit also as a parent in thinking, oh, my son or my daughter doesn't have a disorder, they're just teenagers, and how to talk with them about their needs. Now, the teenage years and adolescence in general has been recognized as a period of change for a long time. And you see the quote there with a little bit of old language that kind of shows that hundreds of years ago, the teenage years were recognized as a period in which there's a lot of development and unusual behavior changes going on. And in literature, Goethe, the sufferings of the young Werther, even spoke about the tendency, to see everything absolute and to get to a point where suicide is contemplated. Something that we see nowadays, which is very problematic in our present times, because the teenagers have the tendency to extreme reactions, and we know that the frontal lobe, the part of the brain that has to do with long-term thinking, long-term planning, inhibition, and thinking ahead and seeing things in context, is developing up to the age of 25 and is not developed at that time. So here you can see a little example of a youngster who got in trouble in his teenage years, and this is the first pop quiz of the presentation. So who can tell me who this youngster is?
Okay.
Excellent, very good. And what is the outcome?
How is he doing?
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good, I would say. So.
So it's a good caption to show you that a lot of things that we might have identified as problematic, I mean, obviously he was in trouble because he was driving without his license, but it's now having the reasoning power at that age to decide that, wait a second, the consequence for this is, right? But it's normal developmental process that they go through, and so yes, they're going to need a lot more guidance from us as much as they'll receive it, but it is a very common thing for a young person to make those kind of decisions.
As I mentioned, there's a lot of changes in the brain, and you can see more on that website. And we love that kind of that line describing the teenage brain as a turbocharged car with an inexperienced driver. That's what it really is.
And it's a huge factor in terms of even when you think of the adults dealing with the adolescent or the teenagers, we need to have that knowledge present in our own minds. Because what happened is we're looking at our youngsters today, and particularly even more now, young people are developing physically so much quicker, and we expect the brain to be on the same path, and it's not. So the brain is still back there, still playing catch up, but when you're looking at them, your expectation of them is way far exceeding what they're capable of doing in their decision making. I've told you 3 times, you're supposed to do this, 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 this. Why aren't you doing it? Well, they're still back here in their brain trying to process it. So we need to be more cognizant of that. So in our own interaction with them, we're going to adapt that lack of knowledge and wisdom, and then how we interact with them has to change.
Go back to the slide you had there with the sleep, the kids who, that one there, yeah.
Yes.
And then you made Oliver made a comment about that's okay because it's teenagers. But how do you deal with the students who, I have it in 2 of them, who won't get out of bed?
Right.
I mean, literally,
on the weekend or during the week?
During school. I mean,
Right.
it's, and then they won't go to sleep at night.
Right, and then there is, for example, there's some projects where in the region where school boards have been trying to address that by saying, okay, we're going to start school later and have it for longer. But one of the things that's a good question actually, and a good example, because what people have found then is, okay, so if we do that, if we try to change the schedule to accommodate the needs of teenagers, that has to involve the whole community. Because if we just change the school hours, well, wait a minute now, how do they get their after school job that's at a certain time, and all the other activities? So it's a kind of almost like a societal kind of change that has to happen. So this is just something that we are as a society realizing right now. How can we accommodate for that? It's not easy, like we don't have all the answers. It's just like a process of thought that we have to begin and say maybe we have to change how we were used to do things in terms of for example, the school hours and how you schedule activities after school or on the weekend.
If I can just a little more specific to your question though, you're saying you have, when students, and we have a lot of students who do not have good sleep hygiene. Their hygiene is, in terms of sleep pattern, is totally off.
Yeah.
Because of all the variables. Some kids stay up all night playing video games, we know that, and they can't wake up in the morning. So it's not a simple one-off answer in terms of, it's looking at a whole strategy of things in terms of the home, as well as in conjunction with the school. A lot of it too is around what it is that makes this child not wanting to be at school. What's missing? Because if I think back when we were in school, I don't know about you, but me, I was excited to get up and go to school. What about that was exciting for me? We're starting to talk to students about that. Because just like how we did this presentation together, really, everything we pulled off the web. You don't have to go far anymore to get things. So is our students. So what would make a student come in the classroom to hear me speak if they can go on the web and get it all? What would it be? What would you think it would be?
Social interaction.
Yeah, the relationship.
Exactly. How am I going to make them feel? What am I going to say that's an added value that the web can't give them? What am I going to let them do in terms of their inquiry mind? Let them start thinking creatively. We can all learn now. I mean, we're in an age now where really if you're a child who is bright and you have lots of assets, you really don't have to go to school. I mean, don't tell the board I said that. but I think I'm challenging to say we have to change the way we teach. Because kids have now ways. I remember me looking at my encyclopedia. You're lying down and you're going through pain, you wait for it to come. That was exciting. Now we have to do our changing in terms of the relationship, the dialogue.
But I like to see schools actually, I mean, you can't change the school day. I mean, that's, you know, like you can't, the work day isn't going to change just because I don't feel like getting up in the morning. I mean, so one of my sons has an IEP and learning disorder, and he does English, what do you call it, like the applied English, and he came home one day and he normally hated English, but now he came home and he said, I love English. And I'm like, what is she doing that's, you know, that's making him love the English? And the funny thing is, English is his first subject of the day, and normally I couldn't get this, he was another son, I couldn't get him out of bed. He was telling me prior to the parent-teacher meeting, he said, do you know what Mrs. McConnell, or what's her name, does? And it sounds funny, and but it's obviously working. She had, the kids were coming in and saying, I'm hungry, I'm tired, they were falling asleep. So it's not a low socioeconomic area, it's just that they weren't going to school for breakfast. So she actually bought a coffee pot and a microwave and a kettle in. And she went to, you know, Starbucks or one of them and got all these cups. And the kids, when they can come in the morning, she sends them over to make coffee, make tea, and they bring in whatever they want and they can heat it up in the microwave while they're at class. So I was asking the teacher, I thought Colin was having me on. So I said to the teacher, do you do this? And she said, every single student in my class has an IEP. And she said, I found very quickly, within a week or whatever it was, that they were all falling asleep on me. So I said, so this is what, and she said, yes. And that's exactly what she does. And it has worked wonders because it's been the spark that has woken them up. So something as simple as that, I mean.
And that's the kind of creativity that we're starting to look at. We know that that's not going to be the solution for all the classes, right? But it's the unique, take an assessment, knowing your students, just like we're going to talk about knowing your children, and knowing where the needs are and being able to pad it up and to build the assets around it. So all strategies don't work for everybody because we're individuals, right? And there's going to be individual pathways we're on that's different from the next student. So it's really being more intentional to look at every student and look at them for who they are, what their area of needs are, what their assets are, build the assets up, pad up the areas that they're deficit in. And I mean, that's something I think that's why the whole mental health now is part of school. It's not sanctioned off as separate from school, right? You used to come to school, you learn, that's all you came to do. Now we do more than that. We have to look at the whole child. You can't separate the brain, learning brain, from the brain that's dealing with issues. You can't do that, they're the same brain.
Do you know, is sleep hygiene taught in schools, part of health?
It's a good
Maybe it's part of
question. I would say phys ed. I would say phys ed it would be.
I'm in grade 6 and still hasn't had it.
No, I don't
and I
think
know
so.
that there was a study that was on the news about a pediatrician in British Columbia. These kids are taking their iPods, their phones, into the bedroom and being texted at all hours of the
Right,
day.
yeah.
And so some of that simple hygiene, which I know you
Yeah,
could get on the
impacts,
internet,
yeah.
but as part of smoking cessation, drug use,
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's a newer area that I'm wondering should be incorporated, if not into.
It's a great point.
And we're just talking about embedding mental health into the curriculum.
I know grade 7's talking about it right now, and sleep as well, because we just had to record sleeping and sugar.
But how do we start it earlier?
Yeah,
That's probably
yeah.
what we have to do, is
Yeah.
look at a conversation of intertwining it earlier in all the levels, so that by the time you get to grade 7, it's not, what do you mean I have to change my pattern?
So it's too late.
Because yeah, exactly. So again, that early addressing of these things might be a way of doing it. And I think we are now focusing on that. And so we are at the table. You will see later on, we do have a leadership team at the board that is looking at from kindergarten to grade 12 about where we can embed things. And because first of all, you also have to have the wherewithal to understand the information and do something with it. So it has to be age appropriate. But it doesn't mean a lot of what we're talking about is not simple tools like regular scheduled bedtime, waking up on, sort of what do you call them, the routines we have in our lives.
I just want to go quickly on that website to show you, because what we wanted to do is show you resources that are evidence-based, that we know are related to research, and because there's so much out on the internet that it's hard to distinguish between different things. And just 2 little pointers. When you go here, you can look at the sleep, for example, because we're talking about also the teenage brain that I had spoken about. And when you go and sleep, you can find, again, this is focused on teenagers, but there's whole presentations on there, slideshows that talk about the sleep. In terms of adolescence, so all that kind of information is on there, and it's like brand new research, as well as mental disorders.
And all the various ones, if you want to understand any particular one more, it's all here. It's all been vetted. It's all been tried and tested in terms of evidence-based practices that have been used. So it's not just just there. It's been
This is Dr. Kutcher.
Yes, Dan Kutcher, yes.
And
So
it's called
teen
teenmentalhealth.org.
And are the teachers incorporating this as part of their?
It's coming out. It will be coming out. We
Yes.
are working on that.
There's two things. There's a curriculum that was done by some Catholic boards in the area that we're just discussing, and there's another research in terms for the curriculum from Stan Kutcher, which we have bought for the board in the summer, that we're going to use as a resource as well. So, and we started talking about grade 9 religion curriculum,
Grade
but
9 and 10.
9 and 10, and we're now starting to talk about elementary as well.
I'm sure you can appreciate that this is something that will take some time to get out into the entire system in a standardized way. So we have to be very thoughtful in how we message it out to our teachers, but we also want them to receive it in a way that's going to be positive rather than like an add-on or making more work. And we want this to come out in a positive way. So we have to be very skilled in how we add it to the work that they're doing already. This is a quick slide I'll just go over with you, but it's just to emphasize the importance of when we look at our students, we have to take in the entire student, which is, there's research that shows you the importance of making sure we recognize you have the student, the child. What does that mean in terms of the sphere in your life? It's about knowing who you are, what are your assets, what are your gifts, celebrating those things, and really be in understanding who you are in relation to society around you. But then the other piece is we have to know that relationship matters. We know that. So in terms of intimacy, it's not just about a one-on-one relationship, boyfriend, girlfriend, husband and wife. We're talking about relationship with your peer, relationship with your teacher, relationship with your neighbor, relationship with your pet. All those things increase empathy in us, and it allows us to mature and develop in a way that's very positive. And then likewise, our achievement in the sphere of learning, you know, from a toddler learning how to ride their bike or whatever, and going on, graduating from elementary school into high school. I'm really pushing the fast button here, but you know, in every stage it's something of achievement, and these are aspects in our lives that build asset. It also then finally builds resilience. So we want to make sure we always factor in the whole child, not just looking at it just at home or at school, but everything that encompasses who we are as individuals.
When we talk about mental health illness at the end of the spectrum for those maybe 3 or 5% of children, where in spite of our efforts they develop these kind of difficulties to that degree that they're diagnosable, and maybe there are genetic vulnerabilities there as well. This is a list, and I don't want to go through it unless you have specific questions. I just want to mention that one example that it is becoming more and more obvious nowadays that even bipolar disorder is something that we see in adolescents, where we have those big swings from being like in a state of euphoria and being able to do everything and wanting to conquer the world and shopping and everything, to falling into a deep black hole and a deep depression. And that's something that can occur as well in adolescence. So it becomes then a more difficult task for the parent to distinguish between the normal variability and change that we see in those years where students, adolescents, is trying to find their self and their own identity, and therefore changing and switching and changing their mind about things and dressing differently and changing friends and so on to a pattern that is becoming a little bit more concerning.
One of the things too with this slide that I really appreciate is when you think of mental health issues, having a mental health issue or disorder, one of the things that we really are working at Halton Catholic is to get rid of the stigma. If you broke your leg and you went and had a cast put on, you wouldn't come back in with a label. And nobody's going to see you as just a broken leg. If you have a mental disorder or a mental issue and you have a label, there's a tendency to see the student in just that label. And what we have to do is say, no, it is an aspect of who this child is. This is an issue that they're dealing with. It's not their entirety. It's not who they are in all of themselves, which is why we did that first thing with the spheres. We have different components to us. Who are we? I'm a wife or a mother, a sister, an aunt, a cousin, a friend, and in not every domain I have an issue. And so maybe this little area I need some extra help with, but you know what, for the big piece, I'm okay. And so that's what we really need to do, because this is what prevents a lot of parents from moving forward to getting their child properly seen and diagnosed. This is also preventing students from going to utilize services to get help because they don't want the label. Because it's how we treat them or interact with them when they have the label. And so we need to do a better job at keeping the label separate from the entire child.
I just want to make a point in case someone else finds themselves in the same boat. I work for a mental health agency, I'm not a clinician, but had a daughter who had a blip in grade 9. Turns out, for anyone who doesn't know, ADD is found in girls in grade 9 primarily because they managed to get through elementary undetected. And ended up going to see, I was on the process of seeing a psychologist. It's in Burlington, they're only here like half a day every 2 weeks or something. The first thing is to meet with the worker. Everything was fine, she was all game for going. We went down to Joe Brand and we walked underneath this label that says mental health services. And she turned to me, she says, great, now you think I'm mental. She was 14. I thought, where does that even come from? I work for a mental health agency. I'm thinking, that was it, she was done. She sat there completely shut off, she was done. After that, I wasn't even allowed to take her to get a diagnosis because she hasn't one on the record.
And that's one of the key things why a lot of our young people aren't getting the services they need, is the whole umbrella that goes over them, and they just feel, oh my gosh,
I'm
everybody's
shocked.
going to know. Where does
Yeah.
it come from? I think we message it even when we don't know we are doing it.
Something.
We've been raised in such subtle ways that we don't even know it. I mean, I look back now and I think of relatives where I hear people would say, he's a little bit funny, just saying. Well, no one, I didn't know what it meant. Like, nobody really talked about it. And so we have so I can go back now and I can actually pinpoint family members who had serious issues that should have gotten help, or some who've been put away. Where's so-and-so? Oh, they're gone to live somewhere else. Oh, okay. Usually if you're gonna go to another country, somebody talks about it, or you know about it, but they just disappear.
But also it's the other kids, I mean, especially
Something
at
is
14. I mean, I think that's, I remember my kid was 4 years old and never watched television, but how did he know about Batman? How did he know about Dunkaroos, which I never bought because I was trying to maintain a low-carb, low-sugar diet. He was getting it from his JK pal.
And so society has a huge impact on how we think and behave.
And you only
They
see
took
the
your
extremes. Like young kids only see the extremes. They see the extreme, or on shows, they see the extreme of, you know, bipolar or whatever, and so they don't want bipolar on their label because
But
they.
remember their brain.
Yeah.
Where are they
They're not
in
logical.
brain development? They're not
Yeah.
using reasoning power,
Yeah.
right? And so that's why we now have this knowledge. That sign there should not be there anymore.
Clearly.
Right?
Yes.
Because now we know what it's going to do to their limited brain power in reasoning. That, you know, if my leg's broken, and they're not going to say, don't take me to the hospital. They are going to go to the hospital.
Sorry to
That's
interrupt,
okay.
we're just having to pick up all our.
Commercial break.
Yeah, really sorry. And if anybody knows a passport they didn't hand in, I'll take that as well, please. Thank you.
To recess.
So this way, when the day's over, you can see by the front door, poof, all the draw winners. Thank you, sorry about that.
Okay, we're gonna have to speed up a bit on some of the slides, because I want to get to the things at the board in terms of the school board, what we're doing. A lot of this information we're giving you, you can get from the websites. Sorry, we had one question and then we
I
can
know,
go.
I'm just wondering, is it because they are so exposed to what, like, for example, technology and also the label itself? Are we using the label maybe too often, or we are mislabeling the kids perhaps?
Well, I mean, it could be all of the above, but what I'm going to say to you, with my own experience over the last 28 years in the field, is that what I said to you about my growing up, nobody talked about mental health. You were put in a sanitarium, or you weren't dangerous, you were deemed to be just a bit, you know, over there. Rather, if we spoke about it and put the right interventions in and dealt with that person, they could have had a much more beneficial life. And so we're at the place now where we're better able to identify and recognize, just like how we're doing with all in the medical realm, right? Cancer and all the things that we're better at detecting. We deal with it, but it doesn't have stigma attached. Somehow mental health does, because I think it takes over our entire being. You know, you say someone has cancer, nobody looks at you from head to toe and think cancer. They're thinking of, you know, where is it? What kind of cancer do you have? They're finding the little spot, whereas mental health takes everything over. And I think obviously society and the messaging we have and exposure will increase people's awareness. I think it's more because we're more knowledgeable, we are better able to identify, and I'm glad that we're identifying it, because we have many people who are either incarcerated because they've done crazy things as a teenager and they needed help and they didn't get it. I would rather, you know, go towards more preventative in terms of helping our young people.
Okay, the important, you can read this, the important thing is, again, to compare what you see in your child to a baseline and to see if this is a uncharacteristic change, and always talk to the teacher, talk to other parents, compare your notes, see if what you see is something that happens elsewhere too, so you can measure this against what is a normal variation within your child's development. And again, it is important to work on building resiliency and strength, and that's what we're trying to do, to work more on a preventative level so that we can reduce the number of times that we have to intervene. We talk about building assets, and there's a proprietary term, developmental assets, but in a general way, there's internal assets. We're trying to build internal qualities that guide choices and create a sense of purpose and focus, and external assets. In terms of mental health disorders, I just want to name two examples quickly. One is anxiety. Anxiety is normal, and that's when we talk about anxiety. As you say, you mentioned maybe it's being overused. I think that we have to talk about those mental processes as something normal and a normal variation. As long as it doesn't significantly interfere with your ability to perform and to be functional, it's a normal thing. But if it like rules your world, if it rules your life and interferes, then it is a problem. And where we see it in the school with anxiety is this child starts to miss a school because the parent felt they should give them a break because they were so anxious. And then it starts creating a pattern. They miss 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and it becomes an attendance issue because it reinforced the child's avoidance, and then we suddenly have a severe problem in school that we can't get the kid into school anymore. So that's one of the most prevalent issues that we're dealing with.
I'm going to use myself as an example. So Oliver signed us up to present here today, and he forgot to tell me that the video camera was going to be in the room and that we're going to be videotaped, and I was supposed to give my permission. So it's two parts to this. First of all, I don't like to do what I'm doing right now. It's not what I like to do. Put me in the background, give me the kids, I do what I have to do. I don't want to be in the front lines. But because I accepted certain jobs over the years, this is part of the job, right? You have to do a lot of public speaking and so forth. So my anxiety at the very early years when I started to do this was just like to the place where it was going to prevent me from performing. So I had to find coping skills, mechanisms that helped me deal with it. So I think I'm managing. I think you would agree, right? Okay. So then today comes and we're getting ready, and then I heard about this. Again, I'm back to that place of, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? But here's one of the things, and we do common practice we use is called cognitive behavioral therapy. I have to do some of myself. And so that is, okay, why is it being done? What is it done for? What are they going to do with it? And da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And so those are the things that helped me do this and ignore that right now. To say, you know what, I'm not going to let this stop me from doing what I'm going to do, because I want to impart as much knowledge and wisdom that I have gleaned over the years to help parents that they can go in and do what they're doing. But yes, does it raise my anxiety? Sure, but it's not going to prevent me from getting into this. I'm not going to get into this area. So I do have anxiety. But when it gets in here, if I run out of the room, and I took my bag and I'm gone, then it's going to be a problem, right? So that's the same with our students. We know students are coming in with anxiety. We have test performance anxiety. We have standing up in front of the class to give a presentation anxiety. We have going from class A to class B anxiety because of a new group of kids. There's just so many things. But it's when we give our students coping skills and mechanism to help them, the general population, manage. When you see the ones that are not, then we have to get to the next level in terms of the type of interventions we put in place. So again, teaching our students it's normal. When I share with young people, when I used to do one-on-one therapy and tell them that I couldn't speak in front of the crowd, they're like, what? Are you kidding me? Again, normalizing a lot of things that they think it's only for them and not for us. Did you have a question?
No. Again, it's important, I mentioned that, to compare, if you see changes in your child, how does that compare to their usual behavior? It's important when we meet a child, we want to find out whether there is a problem, is there a vulnerability, is there a family history. That can tell you a little bit in terms of the things that you have to watch out for. And so it's important that we work together as a community and be open to, without prejudice, to share our observations and not label them, but for the teacher and the parent to work together and say, okay, I've noticed this change in the last 2 weeks. What do you see? And just be open to that conversation. And for you, never be afraid to ask your child, what's up? You know, I've noticed that you have stopped hanging out with your friend Johnny. What's up?
Like, you're not putting any judgment to it, because you know adolescents are really good at detecting judgment statements. Very, very good. Their radar gets up before you even say it, because they're reading your body language. So you want to, it's simple, what's up? Open your arms out, because you're making the possibilities endless, right? So rather than what's up, you already decide what it is. You want them to tell you. No, you just simply say, what's up? Let the chips fall where it is, right? In the interest of time, I would love for you to watch this little video, because I think it will show you what we talked about earlier, about looking at the whole student in terms of who they are.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
My name is Jordan Fagundes, and I suffer from ADHD, Attention Deficit Hyperactive Disorder. This disorder severely inhibits my ability to learn, but I do not let it stop me. I've been an honor student for my entire high school career and will continue to pursue my dreams at university this fall. The most important thing for me is being able to talk about my disorder openly and feel accepted in my community.
My name is Julie Smith, and I suffer from ODD, Oppositional Defiant Disorder, meaning that even if my intentions are good, I often come across as irrational and uncooperative, something in which only a few understand. But I need you to understand this in order for myself and others with ODD to have a successful relationship. Whether they are professional, educational, family, or loving, I need you to understand this. I've been the team captain of both my school soccer and basketball teams. I am an athlete.
My name is Bakar Moy, and I am bipolar. I have a hard time taking control of my emotions, primarily when I'm sad and happy. I also experience long periods of depression. When people are around me, they can't stand it when I'm sad, but they simply don't see my disorder for what it is. I need people around me who are willing to set a positive influence in my life, and that are willing to understand the implications of my disorder, not people who turn their back against me. I love music, and I will be attending an institute to study studio engineering as soon as I'm done high school.
Now you've heard it. Now you've felt it. Now how do you see it? Now, change your view.
But that's just a neat little clip that would show you what we started to talk about at the onset. That students, one of the barriers for students is the fact that if they do get identified with having an issue, which when we're in the know, we can help them better, because like the youngster says, we need to understand what's going to happen in the wax and waning of his highs and lows. If we understand it, we're apt to relate to him better. And so that information is very valuable for us to know as a school community when our students have issues that are identifiable. At the board, we have a mental health leadership team which comprises of Oliver and myself as the co-chairs. And then we have, as you can see, I've got quite large multidisciplinary approach in terms of principal, vice principal, teacher, consultant, parent rep, And then most importantly, we have 3 student reps. And those students' voice are at the table that informs us and helps us in building the strategies that we're going to use to move forward to engage our community, to enhance their learning and build awareness. So we're really excited about this. We are in our 2nd year of just getting this off the ground, and it shows the seriousness of our board in recognizing that this is an area that is well needed and is very valuable for us to develop.
So in terms of our strategy, what we're trying to do is for everybody in the board, we're trying to develop a basic mental health awareness. And everybody knows what we're talking about and uses the same language. And then for some in the board, we develop a more deep working knowledge. So that includes our strategy to have some mental health leads in the schools, 2 people per school, that we are going to train. We have chosen them, almost all of them.
They're all
done now. And those are not necessarily only special ed people in the school, but they can be a teacher, librarian, anybody that we're going to provide some training to so that they are partners in the school for parents, for students, for teachers, that everybody can go to and ask a question and they can point them, or if they don't know the answer, they can help them to know who to contact when there's a question about mental health. And what it also does, it takes away the stigma, because you don't have to go to the counselor's room, but...
Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to say it's the end of session 3. Thank you for everyone who helped and who attended our sessions today. Just like to announce at this time our Indigo Kobo donation winner, and that's Alvaro Aguado. So congratulations to you. And as well, please, if you want to see if you're a winner of one of the many other donations from our sponsors, come to the registration area and we will have those names posted. Thank you and have a great day.
Do you mind if we take 2 more minutes just to quickly flip through and show? This tier obviously is going to be your social workers and your child and youth counselors when you need more intensive support. And psychology, sorry. And so if you just keep flipping to our internal process, I want to show them just to let you know, the leads are not meant to provide counseling. They are like librarians, right? They're go-to. If a teacher needs some advice about, where can I get some advice? I see this behavior, what do you think it is? They're going to point them to using this process. This is going to be rolled out to our system soon, where it's obviously 2 approaches, because elementary, they have access to different players. But as you can see the chart, mental health leads are positioned right next to where the student and parent and the teachers are. And so we know that if a teacher sees something and they talk to the parent, we're suggesting, talk to the parent, talk to the student. And then if they want another set of lens on it, is to speak to the mental health lead about who can I talk to in terms of getting social work, CYC, or external agencies involved. Some of our families we know don't necessarily want to utilize in-school services because of that stigma. They want external. They're going to be able to point them to the right external agencies as well. As long as the student is going to get the attention they need, we're good with wherever as long as they're getting it, that's good. We don't want to prevent that by saying, okay, don't make referrals out, because we know that's not the reality. Is we don't have enough staff internally to support every student in the way we would like to. So we do have to use our community partners. In fact, we're mandated to do that now, as Oliver said earlier. One of the additional mandated piece came down this year will be the mental health and addiction nurses. We're going to be partnering with them, and they'll be coming into our schools hopefully in the new year. So they're going to be helping us as well in addressing the mental health and addiction piece in our board.
And
this website is something that you should have on your fridge. Just like how you have the information about calling for emergency for medical, this is a really good website for accessing anything you want to do with mental health. The beauty of this website is, if you live in Halton now, but you're moving to London, Ontario, and you need services, you wouldn't know how to navigate in London because you don't know what's going on in London. This allows you to go in and search. You may not even have a label, but you know that your son or daughter or yourself, you need some help with anger management. You put that word in, and it's going to show you all the services in the area that you can start making contact with to find what you need to deal with. It's a really, really good website. So it's, I'll give it a site again, it's ementalhealth.ca.
So she cut off the slide here too.
No, actually we did that, we added that when we
okay.
got here. We were talking, we thought, you know what, we
support
should give them that, yeah, no.
So those leads, are they going to be in elementary as well as high
Yes,
school?
yes.
And will the parents be advised?
It will be, we've just got the names now.
Okay.
So we have our sheets, and now we're gonna focus on them, and the whole process about how we're rolling that out is coming out.
And
You
just-
will know about it.
Yeah, just that you know, again, they are not like clinicians and so
No.
on, and we also have other processes that we just developed. Last year, we have a multidisciplinary team for like tier 3 referrals that go through the school for severe
access.
concern. And we have a whole process with special education consultants, CYC social workers. There's a lot of tiers and different ways to access mental health needs.
But parents will be on the communication pathway in understanding who these people are in the school, because you can also contact these people as a parent.
The mental health lead, is that sort of a new position that the board is now hiring?
No, it's not a position. It's an
not.
existing teacher who has the passion, the increased knowledge, because they've also gone to educate themselves. We have a lot of awesome teachers who have been doing this already on their own. They're the go-to people because people know who to go to them because they want to help the kid. So it's not a position in terms of a new job. It's an add-on, but they're happy to do it. Yes.
They're getting serious.
I know.
Hi, I'd just like to ask if Alvaro Aguado is still in the building. Please come down to the registration area to pick up your Kobo. Again, Alvaro Aguado. Thank you.
Can you just, if you don't mind, it would really help us in our next going forward, if there's a next, after your evaluation, if you could just fill out the evaluation for us, I'd really appreciate it. And I'll continue to answer questions until you have to go.
This is fantastic information.
Yeah.
Thank
Very
you
well
all
done.
very, very much.
Thank you. Well, I think our board is very, very serious about this whole issue. And when you think of a Catholic board and looking at the whole child, you know, it's just a natural fit, right? How do we start siloing their different issues? They're one child with, we all have different pieces to us that we need to address in the same way at the same time.
I think it's gotta be anti-stigma. I think they have enough rallies, get-togethers. I think anti-stigma has to be number one.
But it's knowledge that takes the stigma away,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely.
It's
This
knowledge
kind
to
of stuff,
say,
showing the kid's
that's
picture
right.
and what he's done.
Exactly, it's the knowledge that is not, first of all, it's something you're gonna catch, because that's another thing, some people stay away, young people stay away from each other. Or also that it's not the entirety of who you are, right? Just, you know, like some of the youngsters will tell you, yeah, I know when I'm flipping out, and we can teach those kids to tell their friends, you know what, it's not a good time to talk to me. We women know about a little bit about that, right? Each month, we will say, don't talk to us right now. And that's a skill, that's something that helps, because we inform, it's knowledge, right? Thank you very much.
I should also say that the whole mental health strategy of the board came about on a student initiative. And the former student member of our leadership team last year brought us to an idea in terms of the stigma question. There were some very good ideas and activities last year for Mental Health Awareness Week. but it was kind of here and there. And so we decided that this year we're going to plan that awareness week in concert across the board, so that students can be engaged in those activities in every school. So that it's kind of like a general effort, and that way we're trying to minimize the stigma further.
I'd like to send you out with this little thought. You might have read this gem already, but it's very powerful. It says exactly, what it does. Students, as well as adults, we're going to remember how people make us feel. We may not remember what they say, we may not remember what they do, but we will remember how we feel, how they make us feel. And that's something we're really trying to get our teachers to recognize the power of what they have every day when they interface with our students, and how the students feel when they leave and come in. They may not pass your course, they may not get a 90, but if they leave feeling really good, you know what, there's a lot in that asset. Because we all have different learning curves.
Well, you know what? I have a son who suffers with mental illness, and since we lived in Australia before, and in Australia the whole approach was, don't talk about it. And he went around, different, I'm odd, I'm strange, everyone he was almost like a disease. People would run away from him. But since he's come here to Ontario, the whole sense of empowerment and the whole sense of self-advocacy, and teaching him that, you know what, you are okay, you can learn and you will. He's achieving beyond belief. Here was a kid that we thought would barely make it through high school, he'd struggle, but now he's in the academic. He's already talking, in my college, he's talking university, he's talking about to apply for scholarships.
So there's a testament to what we're talking about.
And because the whole Ontario Catholic Board, the approach is, be proud of who you are, and it absolutely works. I mean, my son is a living example.
You should let him write something, a testimonial, or do something with that, because that's what we need. Students really get empowered when they hear their voices of the other students, right? Because we're adults, right?
What do we know?
Well, it just affirms it even more, right? Yeah. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.